Our Global Grid segment is dedicated to a two-day meeting taking place in Uzbekistan, a meeting that will see the Chinese and Russian leaders come together for one-on-one talks as well. The Shanghai Cooperation Organization will be attended by the leaders of India, Pakistan, Turkey and Iran, but this summit has been overshadowed by Russia's war in Ukraine, and both Beijing and Moscow have indicated it will be high up the agenda as Putin and Xi Jinping discuss. Well, for more, I'm joined here in the studio by our foreign editor, Philip Turle, who is following this story for us. Philip, first of all, where has the war in Ukraine left relations between China and Russia?
Well, that is the question I think that Vladimir Putin is quite keen to find the answer to. And that explains why he has decided to go to Uzbekistan to meet President Xi of China. And it's President Xi's first visit overseas since the start of the COVID pandemic nearly 3 years ago. So this is the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. It's called the SCO. It was created in June 2001. It has 9 permanent members, including Russia, China, India, Iran and Pakistan. But Turkey will also be there. Turkey is called a dialogue partner, and that will also be on the sidelines, a discussion between Russia and Turkey over the clashes between Armenia and Azerbaijan. Now, what is the purpose of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization? It's basically to act as an alternative to the United States and to Western multilateral groups, and to boost the idea that there is an alternative to the West that can be run by both China and Russia and Central Asian countries. So, well, I think there's going to be a lot of chat between Russia and China over the situation in Ukraine. Russia is coming there hoping that China is going to supply more to the war effort. What it would really like is weapons and not just spare parts for drones, for example, that Russia has already been supplying. The fact that China has become the major importer of Russian oil is also important to Russia. But I think what Vladimir Putin would really like is for the Chinese to be more demonstrative in their support for the Chinese, for the Russian war effort in Ukraine. And that would certainly help, I think, Vladimir Putin in what has been a very difficult week in seeing lots of defeats in Ukraine and his army really being put under a lot of strain and difficulty. The problem for China is that China knows that its biggest trading partner is the United States. And if it is to go against the United States to support Russia more, it's already not voted in favor of sanctions, abstaining on that in the United Nations Security Council. It risks incurring the wrath of Joe Biden, who's already warned China against supporting Russia, and that could undermine Chinese trade with the United States and with the West. And I think that's something that China is rather concerned about at a time when it's going through a bit of a rocky patch. And I think also on top of that, there is a feeling that is it worth supporting Russia more than not supporting Russia? And I think what we'll see is China will support it verbally, but when it comes down to writing checks and sending it ammunition and weapons, and I think China is beginning to feel that it's not worth that because it risks too much with its relationship with the United States.
Now, Philip, secondly, just how significant is it that this is the Chinese president's first trip outside of China since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic?
Well, it's significant because he's always said, President Xi, that he would not go overseas because there are still lockdowns in China, and he was showing that he would not go, and that would boost the morale of the Chinese people. Well, now he is moving. How will that be taken in China itself, where lockdowns are still being imposed and people are being forced to stay at home? But I think that also shows that President Xi is feeling confident about his position, feeling confident about his status in the world, feeling confident about the fact he could be re-elected next year after the third Chinese Communist Party Congress. That's for a third term in office. So it is a showing by the Chinese that they are in a situation of domination, I think, over Russia for the moment. And President Xi knows that he wants to boost the Belt and Road Initiative for Chinese trade overland into the West. Russia is bogged down with the war in Ukraine. That might also be a time for Russia to exert its influence in those countries, which, of course, are also influenced a lot by Russia. So I think that's another element that President Xi is looking at. And the third important one is Taiwan. President Xi is keeping a watchful eye over what is going on in Ukraine and what Russia is doing, and whether Russia is getting any progress there. At the moment, obviously, that is not happening. And that will give him ideas about whether or not it's feasible later on to maybe launch a takeover of Taiwan. But he doesn't want to ruffle feathers in the United States. He knows that the US are keeping a hawk's eye on what is going on in Taiwan. We had a visit there of Nancy Pelosi, the US Speaker of the House, a hotly disputed visit which was very angrily received in Beijing. But I think that President Xi is keeping a watchful eye on Ukraine to see whether or not there is a hope that he might be able to launch an attack against Taiwan, even though that is a long-term prospect for the Chinese.
And Philip, this all comes at a time when the Ukrainian army is making gains on the ground against Russia.
That is true, and that is going to be another of the discussion points that's going to take place at these talks. If you look at how things are going in Ukraine for Russia, it's not very good. There's been a big push forward by Ukrainian troops into the northeast, into Izium, for example, and also into the southwest. And you can see on this other map we have here that vast swathes of territory in Ukraine have been taken back by Ukrainian forces. They say 8,500 square kilometers. Vladimir Zelensky was in Izium yesterday for a visit to meet residents and troops. That's 150,000 people who are now back under the control of the Ukrainians. Of course, none of that can be independently verified for the moment. But this is bad news for Vladimir Putin, I think, and even more of a reason that he will be seeking support during those talks in Uzbekistan today.
Philip Turle with Global Grid, thank you very much.